What are some business development meeting tips? That's what you asked for, and that's what I've got for you today on this episode of the Inside BS Show. Hi, my name is Dave Lorenzo, and here are your 5 business development meeting tips. I'm glad you could be with me today. This is what we're going to cover, and then at the end of our time together today, at the end of today's show, we're going to cover a key to success, the one thing you don't want to forget about, the one thing you don't want to miss. So please stay with me all the way to the end of the show. All right, let's dive right into the content. And now we're going to cover the 5 business development meeting tips and then the 6th. Tip number 1. You need to set the agenda in advance of your business development meeting. What does this mean? It means you've got to get a yes or a no at the end of your time with your prospect. So how do you do that? Well, when you're setting the meeting, whether it's you or an assistant or someone who schedules your meetings, you say to the person on the other end of the phone, Mr. Smith, here's what's going to happen. We're going to get together on Wednesday, and you're going to want to ask me a lot of questions, I know, and I'll stay with you until I answer every single one. I'm also going to have some questions for you. And at the end of our time together, we're going to need to decide whether or not we're a good fit. That means you're going to have to say yes or no when I ask you, do you think this will work out? Do you think we should work together? And I'll say yes or no when you ask me if I think we should work together. Those are the only 2 answers. You say yes or no, and I say yes or no. There is no maybe. There is no I have to check with my boss. There is no I have to think it over. At the end of our time together, we're going to decide, so make sure you write all your questions down, bring them, come prepared. I'll write all my questions down, and we'll stay in that room until we decide whether or not we want to work together. Does that make sense? When you say that before your business development meeting, you're going to get a great answer at the end. If you get a no, that's okay. It just means not now, and you nurture them and you follow up afterwards. If you get a yes, that means you're moving on to the next step in your sales cycle or in your sales process. So your agenda and clarifying your agenda up front is critically important. And now we're up to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is confirm the same agenda you just gave. And how do you do that? You do it by repeating exactly what you said up front. You just repeat it again, and you repeat it again at the beginning of the meeting. So fast forward to next Wednesday, and you're meeting with Mr. Smith. You walk into the room and you say at the beginning of the meeting, hi, Mr. Smith, it's great to see you. Before we get started, I just want to confirm what we agreed to. You're going to ask me a lot of questions. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. And at the end of our time together, both of us are going to mutually decide whether we're a good fit. You can say yes, you can say no, but you can't say I'm going to think it over. You can't say I'm going to check with my boss. Did you bring all your questions? Are you ready to go? That's confirming the agenda. And you do that so you know that you're going to get a yes or a no at the end of your time together. Tip number 3 is asking qualifying questions. So you enter the business development meeting and you're sitting down and Mr. Smith is asking you all kinds of questions. And then you just occasionally drop into the conversation. So Mr. Smith, tell me, what exactly is the root cause of the problem, do you think? How long have you had this problem? Do you have a budget set aside to fix the problem? Have you given any thought to how much you're willing to spend to address this issue? And Mr. Smith, why now? Why do you want to solve this problem right now? What those questions did is they established that you had the money, that Mr. Smith had the money to afford to work with you. He had an actual problem that you could solve. He was ready, willing, and able to make a decision. He's the decision maker, and he had the urgency. He's ready to go right now. Money, a problem you can solve, the ability to make a decision, and urgency. Those are the 4 qualifying elements you need. Here are the questions you need to ask. So for money, Mr. Smith, do you have a budget set aside to solve this problem? And he's going to say, no, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. They always do that. And you say, listen, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for 30 years. Everybody knows what they can spend and what they can't spend. You don't want to tell me. I get it. But in order for me to understand whether or not it makes sense for us to work together, I need to know how much you have available. I don't want to waste your time. I certainly don't want to waste my time. So do you have $50,000 to spend to fix this problem? Do you have $100,000? Do you have between $100,000 and $200,000? Create a range and let him play that game with you. The second thing is the problem you can solve. So Mr. Smith, tell me exactly what the problem is again. Tell me why this is a problem. Why is this important to you personally? What happens to you if this problem doesn't get solved? Then there's decision-making ability. Mr. Smith, like I told you before, I've been doing this a long time, and in my experience, there's usually a committee or at least a couple of other people that need to be involved in a decision of this size. Who else do you and I need to involve in this process? Who else from your company do we need to get involved? That will tell you whether he's the ultimate decision maker or whether there's other people. And then finally, urgency. Mr. Smith, you told me that you've had this problem for 6 months. Why do you want to solve it now? What's the importance of solving it now? What happens if you don't solve this problem now? How much more money do you think it will cost if you don't solve this problem? So those are the qualifying questions, and that is tip number 3. Tip number 4. You've got to decide on next steps, but the next steps have to be by mutual agreement. So remember, we talked about the agenda, and then we talked about confirming the agenda. As you're wrapping up your business development meeting, you're going to say, Mr. Smith, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. I think we're a good fit. I think I can help you with this problem. I think I can give you probably a 10 times return on your investment. What do you think? And he's going to tell you what he thinks. Mr. Smith, here's what I think a great next step would be. I think a great next step would be for you and I to sit down with accounting and talk to accounting about how you'd like to structure the payment for this program. There's going to be a lot that's going into this, and I'm going to want to have you connect me with accounting to make sure that they're okay with the way we have the payment structure set up. Does that next step work for you? Boom, you got mutual agreement. And then you move forward with the next steps. The 5th step is nurturing. So if you decide that you're not going to work with Mr. Smith, he's just not ready, he doesn't have the urgency, or Mr. Smith says, hey, listen, this is not for me, I'm not going to be able to do this right now, then you say, no problem, Mr. Smith, I understand. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me. Would you mind if I stayed in touch with you? I'd like to put you on my newsletter list, and I'd like to give you a call once a month or so, check in with you, see how you're doing, see if anything changes. And by the way, Mr. Smith, I'm going to keep reaching out to you even if you decide to go with somebody else to solve this problem. But can you do me a favor? If you decide to go with somebody else, would you mind calling me and just giving me the opportunity to look over what they proposed? Maybe I can do something different that will be more cost effective, or maybe I can do something better. I just want to make sure that you and I maintain our relationship. And I'm probably not going to be able to, match a lower price. I don't know what your threshold is because you didn't tell me, but I want to keep a good relationship between us because you never know when we're going to work together. That's the last step. That's the nurturing step. And then you keep following up with him over and over again. I can't tell you how many times, it's got to be hundreds of times, the initial meeting didn't work out, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, somebody's called me and we had a deal. Or a year passed by and they hired somebody else, and that somebody else didn't work out. And they called me and asked me to come in and straighten things out for them. So the nurture step is critical. Now we're up to the last step in this process, and that's the key to success. And I'm going to share that key to success with you. Before I do, I got a special gift for you. If you're in business development, and that's why you're watching this video on business development tips, I want to share with you my business development system. It's called my Revenue Roadmap. To get this system for free, that's right, I'm giving it to you for free because I really appreciate you being a loyal, valued viewer and a subscriber. So go to revenueroadmapguide.com, revenueroadmapguide.com. Enter your contact information there, and you'll get instant access to my Revenue Roadmap Guide. That's my business development system. It works like magic. All you have to do is answer the questions at the end of the Revenue Roadmap Guide. You can customize it to you and your business. It will help you grow, and it will make things a lot easier for you and your team. All right, we're up to the key to success. That's the last step in this process, and that key to success is be transparent, share your system with the client, and follow it. Here's what I'd like you to do, Mr. Client. I'd like you to talk to me about the agenda. I'm going to share the agenda with you. Talk to me about it. If you agree with it, let me know. If you disagree with it or you'd like to add to it, I'm all ears. I'd be happy to do it. Mr. Smith, I'd like to confirm the agenda. We're sitting down to meet now. Mr. Smith, I'd like to confirm the agenda with you. And then next, I'm going to ask you a few questions to determine whether it makes sense for us to work together. Those few questions are the qualifying questions. Mr. Smith, next steps look like this. That's what we're up to. Mr. Smith, I understand this is not a good time for us to work together. I'd like to maintain our relationship, continue to nurture it. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to add you to my newsletter. I'd like to call you once a month just to check in. Would that be okay? Share your entire system. Be transparent, because here's the thing. For years, business development people, salespeople, marketing people have been trying to fool prospects, and you can't do that anymore. Just tell them you're working on a system. It's a business development system. You can use my system, the revenue roadmap, if you want. Be transparent with the client, with the prospect. They love it, and there's no surprises. Everybody knows what works and what doesn't work. Everybody knows whether you're going to do business or you're not going to do business. That's the end of this show today. Be sure and go down right below me. Watch the next video in our series for business development executives. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video right below. Click that video right now. See you there.